Hello again, everybody, and welcome back to the channel. Appreciate you joining us today. Well, I've got another pistol video for you here today, and this is one that I've been waiting to get my hands on. You know, there's various challenges with distributors trying to get guns, and I finally got one. So today I have for you the Springfield Hellcat RDP, which is the Rapid Defense Package. The Springfield Hellcat is a pretty popular pistol already. These micro compacts, these little high capacity small pistols have really taken off. You know, everything from your Sig Sauer 365, you've got your Shield Plus, you know, the Glocks with various magazine configurations, and of course the Hellcat itself has done really well. And they have a unique offering in this one because they feature a compensator and a red dot optic, as well as some other interesting features that go with it. So the question obviously is going to be, does this pistol contain real functional upgrades that are worth the price? Is it something you'd really, realistically want to carry as a carry weapon? Or is it just, a bunch of features that made a small gun bigger? Well, we're going to answer those questions plus many more in just a minute. All right, and once again, welcome back. We do appreciate it. For those of you watching for the first time, or if you've watched our videos before and you haven't had a chance to subscribe, would you please do so? It just takes a second. If you could just locate that little subscribe button in the lower right-hand corner of your screen and hit that. If you're on a mobile device, if you could just scroll down below the video and hit subscribe, then hit the bell icon. It'll let you know whenever we do something new. It helps us out a lot, and we really, really appreciate it. So, Springfield Hellcat RDP. Been waiting to get this pistol, all over the country, as you may know. With obviously, if you're watching, this video, a lot of you are enthusiasts that are looking at new stuff as it comes out, and you're kind of keeping up with what's going on, with the market, being able to buy things, and you know that it's difficult a lot of times to acquire stuff. Of course, we have our friends to thank over at Don's Weaponry for providing us this beautiful example of the Hellcat RDP for today's tabletop review. They're a big supporter of firearm safety and education, and we can't thank them enough. So, first thing we always like to do is do a little comparison between these with what we can. Now, keep in mind as we talk about this, because it has a compensator, and that is unique to this as far as the micro compacts that I have, I'm going to compare it with the closest thing that I have, which is going to be my little Sig P365X Romeo Zero. And if you look at these two, they're going to look pretty close aside from the compensator, and I'm going to cover a couple of things about this. Now, if you look at it, I like to try to break it up. If you look at the slide, they're very much about the same size or about the same, length. Get them evened up here. Your trigger guards are about the same area. And the spacing, the grip, its full length, is very much similar. Now, something to keep in mind, just so you understand the comparison we're making here. Now, this particular firearm with its flush magazine has got one more round than the smaller magazine here. This is a 12-round magazine. The Hellcat comes with two magazines. This one here with the pinky extension has got 11 rounds. And then you have another magazine here that is a 13-rounder that has a, the extended body on it here. Now I'm going to talk about that a little more when we get to the features. But with their standard magazines in this case, they're going to be very close to the same size. And like I say, once again, you're not really going to save a whole lot in the total length because it's this threaded barrel. About the best you could do is if you remove the compensator, of course you can put the the thread protector on it, and that'll save you a little bit of length if you don't plan on using the compensator or anything else. And of course, because it's a threaded barrel, you can equip this with a suppressor. So if you were wanting to practice or practice shooting targets or whatever, or if you had it configured as something that was for defense and you kept it indoors, whatever the reason may be, obviously you can use a suppressor with the weapon. Now, kind of going around, if you look over the top, this is another good comparison because you can see that the slides themselves are very, very, very close. The optic locations are just a little bit different because they're different optics, but you get the idea. They're extremely similar as far as their overall dimensions, and when you look at them from the back, you get the same thing here. The length, you've got just a little tiny bit of extra length there out of the 365, and of course, but that's until you put the larger magazine in the Hellcat. So it's a pretty good comparison. Now, another thing that I like to do as far as size comparisons, I'm going to compare it with something that's not in the same capacity range, but is an extremely popular smaller gun. And of course, that's going to be your Glock 43, which is this firearm right here. Now, the main reason I want you to see this is because a lot of people have Glock 43s. And of course, Glock has got the 43X now, and they have other weapons in the 43X. You can get, extended capacity magazines for it that bring its capacity closer to this. But because this is a very popular firearm, if you look, you will see that its basic dimensions are really, really, really close to the Hellcat. So if you're used to carrying a Glock 43, you're going to have a similar feel as far as size on the body when you're carrying the Hellcat, which is why I want you to see this. So as far as size comparison, that gives you a pretty good idea of what it's going to be like compared to some of the other small pistols you may be familiar with. Alright, well, let's go ahead and talk about the features because we have a lot to talk about. And in no particular order, as we look at the pistol, you got your compensator here on the front. This thing is kind of interesting. Now, obviously, we have a threaded barrel that the compensator is on. And there's a little tab here on the bottom that you push if you want to, loosen and ultimately take this thing off. And you can hear it click there. It's self-indexing, so when you take it off and on, it will end up, in the proper orientation, facing the proper way when it's on the barrel. So you don't have to worry about those kinds of things whenever you're disassembling or cleaning or anything like that. It's made out of anodized aluminum, so it's actually, pretty hardy. Another big feature of this firearm is the red dot sight. It's the Hex Wasp. And the interesting thing about this is, some of these smaller red dots, some of the complaints have been that they've been made, cheaply, that they're plastic and they have plastic lens. And this actually has a aluminum body for the sight here, and so it's quite a bit hardier than maybe some of the others that you may have been seeing on other firearms. Now, they've got this matched up with what they call the U. It's the U dot sights. You can see obviously the U-shaped channel, and you've got your high visibility sight in the front there. So it's a pretty good configuration. Now, when you put the battery in this and you mount it, it's always on. So there is no on-off switch for this red dot. Now, they've advertised the battery life as 65,000 hours. Well, that being the case, you shouldn't have to be going into it very often anyway, so I don't see that as a big concern. Obviously, you have your windage and elevation adjustments on it to get that centered up co-witness properly the way you like. So that's easy enough. And of course, they give you the tools to do all of that. So it's not a bad little package. It is auto dimming and brightening, and I've seen some other discussion about that optic, and people have expressed different concerns about its visibility when it's low light versus bright. Now, one of the things that I heard was that at low visibility it sort of pulses or it's hard to see, but I did not experience any of that. Now, it's dim. If we turn all the lights off and we're in complete darkness looking through the optic, yes, it's dim, but it was steady. It's just dim and in total blackness, you're not really going to need it much more than that in theory. And in bright light, it definitely gets very bright, but it does it automatically. Now, in a perfect world, I would probably like to be able to adjust that myself. Most of the pistols that I have that have got optics, I can adjust the brightness. Because personally, I would keep mine bright probably all the time. Not full bright, but I like to go about 3/4 of the way on the brightness. I just like a nice bright dot, and that's just me. But anyway, the Springfield advertises this optic as a $299 add-on. So when you consider the total price of the gun, think about that they're giving you a rather expensive optic and a compensator. So going around the rest of the firearm, you can see there's some pretty good, these are pretty deep, pretty good front serrations. Same thing on the back. So cocking the weapon's pretty easy. You do have a small rail here if you want to put a light. I know a lot of people like putting lights and lasers on their pistols. You can do that with this if you want to. Of course, this is your takedown lever and your slide lock and release. And this model here has the manual safety. Now, you can get this without the manual safety. In a perfect world, normally I would have probably have said to you, this gun is nice, but I really hate manual safeties on my gun. And that's normally a true statement. But this manual safety is the most low profile, out of my way thing that I've ever seen. If you look at it from the back, as you can see, it sticks up very, very little. And it's also beveled from the bottom to the top. So my hand slides right over it. My normal concern is me accidentally, getting in a hurry, doing something to hit that safety and to turn it on inadvertently. I don't see any way that's going to happen here. I've actually really enjoyed using this pistol, and I basically just don't even think about it being there because I don't put manual safeties on my guns, and I just ignore this one because it's out of the way. So to me, it's not a deal breaker at all. Of course, you have your magazine release. We're going to remove this magazine, do a quick safety check for you. As you can see all the way through. We are free and clear. You can see the feed ramp on the barrel right there. Just so you can get a better look at this is your 11-round magazine. It has the little pinky extension. I wanted you to see this for a couple of reasons. Okay, so you can see my fingers. You can see where they land relative to the pinky extension. And then my fingers wrap around the gun. Now, I have pretty good sized fingers. I'll tell you that right now. So if you got really small hands, then your hand may go up a little further in here. But I got pretty big fingers. So that's with the pinky extension. Now watch what happens when I take the extended magazine. This is your 13-round extended magazine. Now when this goes inside, look at my hand. Look what we just did. Okay, you see how my hand is basically covering the exact same space? My fingers have just the same amount of room. And the reason I mention that is if you take this magazine and you lay it on top of the other one, there's just a little tiny sliver of space savings between the two magazines. And so, to me, the only reason I would care about an extended magazine versus a smaller one like this with the pinky extension would be the extra space. Well, between these two configurations, it didn't make any difference when I was carrying it because this is practically the same. Very, very, very little difference here. Just a small bit difference in the magazine. And you get 2 extra rounds. Now, if you're really, really concerned about that space, you, of course, can put a flush plate on your magazine and have one that does indeed fit a little bit smaller. And, of course, that would be a little bit easier for you to conceal. But I didn't consider it a really big deal at all. And of course, last but not least, you've got what they call the Gen 2 trigger on this thing. And having shot the older Hellcats and this one, the trigger felt real similar, but I'll tell you more about it when I do the range portion of this. But I do feel like it's a pretty good trigger. Oh, and one more thing, of course, the texturing. If you've had the other Springfield pistols with the texturing, this is a lighter texture. This is a lot more like almost like what's on the SIG P365, and I rather like it. So pretty good feature set. They've done a pretty good job putting a lot of stuff together in a small package there. All right, well, let's talk about the range. Well, when I first got my hands on this pistol, of course, one of the questions that immediately has come up is, we have a pistol here that's a platform that's already pretty popular. It's very accurate. It's pretty good just the way it is. These add-ons that we're talking about here, is there really anything to this? Are we going to gain any function with this compensator? Are we going to gain anything with the red dot optic? Well, at the range, interestingly enough, I tried it both ways. So with the compensator removed and without using the red dot optic, just using it as a regular pistol, right out of the box, practice range, I typically defensively train at around 21 feet. I shoot further distances just, for fun, but I typically train at around 7 meters, and that's just how I do it. Always have. And I was getting really nice sub 1 inch groups immediately with this gun. It wasn't even that hard. It took just a few shots. Really, after the first magazine, I was shooting a really good group with the gun. And the trigger, this is what they call the Gen 2 trigger, and it's pretty good. I shot the Hellcat when it first came out, and the trigger felt good, but this one feels a lot more consistent. With my scale, I got about 5 pounds on the trigger, anywhere from like 4.7 to 5.1. So it's around a 5 pound consistent pull on mine, and it's just really good. It's that kind of repeatable performance that you're looking for. Now, as far as the trigger action, okay, if you watch this, we come in, and then I'm going to reset the trigger. That reset is really good. On these small pistols, that's one of the complaints that I've seen on a lot of these pistols that aren't made as well. But this trigger is just so consistent. It's just so well done. And you can feel that when you're shooting the firearm. So right out of the box, without any of the goodies on it, shot really well. And using different ammo, S&B, Blazer, Winchester, Federal, everything I fed this gun, including some hollow points. I had a little bit of everything, kind of a mixed bag of hollow points, Hydroshocks and Corbons, everything else. It did really, really nice. So I thought, okay, well, let's add the compensator and the red dot and see what happens. Well, what was already a good shooting pistol, the compensator does make a difference. I was actually kind of overshooting the same hole in a lot of places from 21 feet with the compensator, and tried to convince myself that it was just some kind of a mental trick because I had it on there, but I kept changing to new targets and getting the same result. Now, using the optic, like I say, it's auto adjusting and it's pretty good. I'd rather if I could keep it on a certain brightness myself, and in the range it was just dark enough to where it was on a little bit lower setting than what I like, but I don't think it would bother most people because you can still see it. I'm just kind of picky. I like a brighter dot, but using the dot it worked very well. But I also found myself being able to utilize that U channel sight very well because the visibility is so good on it. And basically what I'm saying is, whether using the regular sight or the red dot, it's a really good package, and it was a more accurate shooting gun when I had the compensator. And I wasn't sure whether it was going to be. Of course, as always, whenever we're having one of these little shoot fests, we did have some new shooters around that wanted to take a look at it. Some had never had their hands on a pistol like this before. And with a little getting used to, maybe 1 or 2 magazines, even rookie shooters, people who didn't have really any experience with handguns, were doing a pretty good job with this. So I think it's a very shooter-friendly handgun, and it's kind of up to you, obviously, how you configure it, because, that's one thing I do like. It has a lot of features, but you can kind of decide how you want to use those features. You know, if you want the compensator, you can do it. If not, you can take it off. You can change and use a suppressor. You can use it with or without the optic. You know, if you're not digging their optic, I'm sure there'll be some a lot of other options that can be changed with. But the bottom line is that the weapon has a lot of versatility. It does have some functional gain from the optic and the compensator, and the new trigger is pretty good. So as far as range performance, you know, Springfield advertised this as an improvement, and I'm going to have to agree with them. It did a really, really good job. So what's it like to carry the Springfield Hellcat RDP? As far as a carry pistol on the body, well, when I got this thing, I didn't have a lot of holster options that were going to be readily available for it. I have a holster, a little fancier one, ordered for it now. But, you know, I have several holsters that are kind of all-purpose holsters, and they've been becoming more and more useful on these smaller pistols with the red dot optics. And one of the ones I've been using a lot, and I have mentioned it in some other... I've mentioned it before, and of course, there's a company called Tagwa that makes all kinds of different holsters, but they make a TX4 Victory. And there's a lot of different configurations for that, and I've got several different sizes. But I found myself with this simple little holster. Any micro compact that has a red dot optic on it, it will go right in this little TX4. As you can see, the compensator sticks out the bottom just a little bit. Now, they make bigger versions of this. This is just one I had randomly among the 5 or 6 of these that I've got. But as you can see, this particular holster can be used inside the waistband, outside the waistband. It can be crossbody, or it can be worn in the small of the back. So I normally wear my holster in the 3 o'clock position. And in the 3 o'clock position on the belt, this really wasn't that bad. It doesn't take up any more space than some of the other pistols that I carry in the same size. Now, of course, with one like this, it's open, so you do have more of the back of the gun against the body, which is why I have a more elaborate leather and Kydex holster coming. But just to get out and carry the gun and see how it did, I was pretty impressed just doing something like this. But in that configuration, the weight and the size of the Hellcat didn't seem like it was a big deal. Obviously, since it's a little bit longer, you are a little bit conscious of the size. But I've carried bigger guns than this on a routine basis. I carried a Glock 19 almost exclusively for a long time. And of course, this is smaller than that with the compensator. So it's not that bad. Of course, it's very thin. So as far as how it feels inside the waistband is pretty impressive. And I also tried carrying this with the holster in the other configuration, one of the others, wearing it outside the waistband on the belt line. And it was even more comfortable that way. And I normally wear, I have an undershirt, and I usually wear something like an outer shirt as well. So it's very easy to conceal it, even if it's on the outside, because it's so thin. So wearing this gun for days on end, several days in a row, as my everyday carry, the weight felt good. It didn't feel like it was a problem on the body. I ended up spending most of my time in the outside the waistband configuration with the little Victory holster, and it was nice. And of course, I'm going to get a nicer leather and Kydex holster, and I'm going to give that a run too. But this was good enough for me to see that it was extremely comfortable. The weight was good, so to me, not a problem for everyday carry. So, overall impressions. Well, Springfield Hellcat RDP. This pistol has a lot of interesting goodies on it. So, as the Rapid Defense package, they brought this pistol to us presenting a unique combination. Compensator, the hex wasp optic. Of course, you know, your capacity options. You've got a 11+1 configuration, and of course you've got this larger 13+1. So for the size of the pistol and the amount of features that you have, I'm pretty impressed overall, because, you know, by the time you know, it varies from dealership to dealership, but, you know, by the time you buy this pistol, if you'd have bought an optic separately for it, you'd have spent the same money or more than what this pistol costs with all that stuff, you know, right out of the box. Plus you get a compensator, which, you know, that's new. This is something unique that they've done, and it ended up being a very functional upgrade. The Gen 2 trigger was a joy to shoot. It's very, very predictable. So the trigger feel is the same every time. And of course, you know, the only thing that I thought I would do differently would be the manual safety, because I'm not a big fan of manual safeties on my guns. But if you look at this one, you know, when the safety's engaged, once again, we're talking about, it's very easy, very simple, but it's so low profile that no matter how hard I tried in different configurations with my hand to accidentally manipulate the manual safety, I couldn't do it. So I don't consider it a problem. It's not in my way. And if I want to leave it off and never use it, I'm not worried about it ever being on. And of course, you can see very quickly, visually, whether it is engaged or not. So, you know, it has a good weight. It has decent grip and texture. It's a good size. It feels good in the hand. It shoots very well. It has a good basic sight system. Plus, it's got the optic on top of that. So, you know, if you're looking to see whether this is a functional upgrade over the Hellcat, then it absolutely is. Whether you need those upgrades or not, of course, that's entirely up to you. You know, some people, the biggest goal that they have is to keep the smallest possible platform as they can. And of course, if that's you, you can make this a little bit smaller by taking the compensator off and putting the cap over the barrel. And you can even change out your magazine with a flush plate. So you can make it smaller. You could even use it without the optic, or you can replace it with one of your choosing. But they give you a lot out of the box. It's a good shooting gun, and so it doesn't feel like it's a bunch of marketing trickery to me. It feels like they added a bunch of stuff to a really good gun that does actually make it better. All right. Well, that's going to do it for today. Once again, we really, really appreciate you guys tuning in, watching the videos, of course, leaving comments. All of your input helps other shooters and other people watching to get information, and that's what makes this whole community work. And we really do thank you. So we're going to be back soon with another video for you. And until then, of course, everybody be safe and have a great day. Thanks a lot.